My name is David Cambria, currently a strategic advisor for 273 Ventures, which is an AI company. I've spent the better part of 25 years inside corporate law departments and law firms trying to drive operational efficiencies as well as align business value to what legal provides to the clients they serve. So I think the need to have metrics as a way to measure what legal's delivered has been in the industry for a very long time. The tipping point has really come in our ability to actually harness those insights, but also reduce the friction by which we capture that data to have more consistent data and greater fidelity in that data. So we're starting to see some of that, one with the advancement of technologies that help with the collection of that, but two, really with the advancement of some of the generative AI technologies, which actually help to make that a more passive activity and take the humans out of the mix in terms of how do we actually start to collect that so that we can aggregate and get better insights on fidelity. Yeah. So let's start with some of the similarities first, because I think some of the similarities are around the desire on both sides to actually want to collect that and get better insights. I think where the differences lie is really what's the motivation in trying to do that. On the law firm side, it's really about how do I leverage those metrics to actually help run the firm more effectively to bring its best foot forward to its clients in terms of the problems it's trying to solve. On the law department side, a lot of those data really are around what work has been done and how do I have predictive insights about what might be happening in the future that might impact stakeholder value, but that may also impact really the stories I tell to my ultimate clients, which are the business unit leaders and the businesses I support. Ultimately, I think you start to see a greater nimbleness on the law firm side because their clients are actually pushing them faster in multiple fronts to utilize that data. But what's happening also is as the corporate law departments try to do more with less, as the corporate law departments try to really talk to their business leaders in a mindset that they understand, which is really about driving the business, you do start to see, and you are continuing to see, an evolution of those capabilities in the corporate law department. But they're doing that in a way that has been slower just because of the fact that while those insights are important, the investments and the scale that you might get from a law firm, which are driven by client needs and trying to drive revenue, which is core to their business, isn't the same in the law department, where some of those analytics are a non-core function of a non-core function. And so trying to get that investment is very important. Ultimately, the goals are the same, and I think they're aligned in terms of that storytelling and in terms of having that insight. I think the pace and change in which that's happening continues to kind of be a big differentiator in that. So I'd say they both have their challenges. Look, on the corporate law department side, the challenge really is, do I have the underlying data to actually do the work and get the insights that I am looking for? A lot of that is around, do I have the scale? Do I have the collection mechanisms to do that? Do I actually even understand what metrics matter in terms of doing that insight? And so that's the challenge. On the law firm side, it's that they're being pulled in many, many different directions by multiple clients. That there isn't one consistent story or thing they're trying to solve for. So instead of trying to solve for a holistic data challenge and set of data problems, really what they're faced with is trying to please their clients across the board, and I don't have consistency. Ultimately, all of these metrics go down to really talking about what's the productivity that my law firms are providing, what problems are they solving, and how successful are they at solving that, and really what are some of the insights I could do that talk about what are the investments I'm making in legal and how does that translate to a business need. They both share that, they just come at it from a different way. If I had to put my finger on the scale, I'd say because corporate law departments still heavily rely on their law firms to help lead them through that journey, I think it's a harder problem to solve for on the law firm side at the moment because, again, of the scale and because of the fact that they have multiple clients pulling on them in multiple ways. Look, I think the advice I give on both sides is start with the end in mind. What is the shining city on a hill, and what is the overall objective you're trying to do? There are a lot of things you can measure that actually aren't relevant to driving the business. And so when I look at metrics, it's how do I drive the business? How do I gain insights that are actionable that actually help me do better at whatever my ultimate goal is? Is it better connectedness with my clients who are on the inside at a corporate law department? Or is it better connectedness to my clients that the firm is serving? It's understanding what are we trying to demonstrate and what are we trying to measure. Now, it sounds simple, but it's actually not as simple because a lot of the metrics we collect are very informative. They tell me something. They're not very insightful. They don't drive me to action. They don't drive me to change the way I'm doing my business. And a lot of what I want to try to do with these metrics is be proactive. I want to think about, well, what would be meaningful enough that could drive to an action that could actually help me be better at what it is I am trying to deliver on. And so I'd say you can measure a whole lots of things and you can burn a lot of calories measuring lots of things. I would say as you start out, start with 4 or 5 of the most impactful things that will actually help you gain insights and momentum, because that really is what drives and accelerates the excitement about measuring other things. The other thing is, don't ask your lawyers, whether it's in a law firm or in a corporate law department, to measure unnatural acts or things that they don't want to do. And by that I mean stick with a simple set of metrics and capabilities that are a natural extension of the work they're doing, right? That are a natural extension of how it is they practice law. Because the minute I rely on collecting metrics that require a lawyer to do something different than they would normally do in their day-to-day is the minute you have a single point of failure in that collection, and the minute you have a single point of failure in the overall analytics and insights. And so that's what I would say. Start small, start consistent with the practice, understand what you're measuring, and understand if I measure something, how will it drive something differently within my law firm or law department that would have a meaningful impact in the actual delivery of legal services and the businesses I support. Yeah, I would say, look, if people are interested in getting into legal ops, I want you to understand a few things. One, legal operations isn't a position or a role. It's actually a set of disciplines you apply to the delivery of legal services. So having an understanding of how legal works is important, but also having an understanding about how businesses operate, how businesses that you're supporting make money. I would also say you want to have a good understanding of technology on a very broad level. And you also want to look for roles that have you really apply what I'd call baseline business or management capabilities. How do people adopt to change? How do I do transformations? How do I document those things? But overall, am I a good storyteller? Can I help my law department or law firm really tell a story about the work I'm doing, the value it provides, and how it impacts the business? And so it's one thing to talk about cost savings and look, I saved you X number of dollars. It's another thing to talk about how it impacts the business. And so a good example I could share is, at one point I had, in a corporate law department, I helped the law department save $22 million in the course of a 6-month period. That seems like a lot of money. But in fact, for a company that has $90 billion in revenue, it actually wasn't very interesting. It wasn't until you told the story that at a 3% margin, which that business was in, you'd have to sell $786 million worth of stuff in order to make that $22 million, that the business started to say, okay, now I can actually quantify what they're doing and how that has value. Again, it's the same metric, but it's in context of the business or actually the receiver of that particular metric that actually gave it meaning and gave it purpose. And that's a lot of what you want to do when you're thinking about your legal operations journey. The other thing I'd say is just rely on the community. There are a number of people out there who can bring to life a lot of the insights that you read about. And so I'd say don't hesitate to rely on those people. Because again, it's a community that doesn't have a formal education. It's a group of lessons that are learned over time, and there's a bunch of people who've been there long before you who can help kind of guide you through that journey and talk to you about the mistakes they've made, but the successes they've had. And I think that's an important piece as well.